What happens when one of Hollywood's most polished stars walks onto the set of America's most unpredictable daytime talk show and refuses to play along? The audience inside the studio thought they were about to watch another charming celebrity interview. A few laughs, some movie promotion, maybe a playful disagreement. But within minutes, the atmosphere inside the View shifted so dramatically that even the camera operators looked nervous behind the lights. Before we dive into this unbelievable showdown, make sure to subscribe to the Echo View, hit that like button, and comment below with where you're watching from, because this story only gets more intense from here. The applause thundered through the studio as Margot Robbie stepped onto the stage with that effortless Hollywood confidence people had come to expect from her. She smiled warmly, waving toward the audience in a cream-colored blazer that caught the studio lights perfectly. For a moment, everything looked routine, comfortable, safe. But sitting across the table, Joy Behar already had a different energy. She leaned back slightly in her chair, fingers folded together, wearing the expression longtime viewers recognized instantly, the one that usually meant she was preparing to push harder than expected. The other hosts welcomed Margot with compliments about her latest film, joking about the chaos of Hollywood schedules and red carpets. The crowd laughed. Margot answered smoothly, calm and charismatic, her Australian accent softening every sentence. But Joy barely smiled, and people in the audience started noticing. "You know," Joy interrupted suddenly, tilting her head, "there's something fascinating about celebrities lately." The room quieted. Margot blinked politely. "Oh," Joy shrugged. "Actors keep telling ordinary people how to think, how to live, what's right, what's wrong. Sometimes I wonder if Hollywood has become more interested in lectures than entertainment." A few scattered claps came from the audience. The other hosts shifted in their seats. Margot smiled carefully, but there was a tiny pause before she answered. "Well," she said gently, "I think artists have always used their voices." Joy immediately leaned forward. "Sure, but there's a difference between having a voice and talking down to people." A murmur rolled through the crowd. The camera cut briefly to audience members exchanging looks. Margot's expression stayed composed, though something behind her eyes sharpened slightly. "I don't think encouraging empathy is talking down to people." Joy let out a small laugh. "Depends how it's delivered." That sentence landed harder than expected. The energy in the room shifted instantly, subtle but unmistakable. Even the audience applause afterward sounded uncertain. Margot crossed one leg over the other, still smiling, but now her posture looked more guarded. "I think most actors just care about issues affecting real people." Joy raised an eyebrow. "Real people? Or Twitter people?" A louder reaction this time. One audience member audibly gasped. The tension suddenly felt visible. Whoopi Goldberg quickly jumped in, trying to smooth the atmosphere. "Well, everybody has opinions." But Joy wasn't done. "I'm serious," she continued. "A lot of Americans feel exhausted being told they're terrible human beings unless they agree with celebrities." Margot inhaled slowly. The kind of slow breath someone takes when they're deciding whether to stay polite or finally respond honestly. The studio lights suddenly felt harsher. "You know what's interesting?" Margot said quietly. Joy leaned back. "Tell me." Margot's smile faded just slightly. "People always say celebrities should stay silent. But nobody says that to talk show hosts." The audience erupted. Half applause, half shocked laughter. Joy's eyes widened for a fraction of a second. The other hosts looked stunned. And suddenly the interview no longer felt like promotion. It felt personal. Joy folded her arms. Talk show hosts aren't pretending to save the world. Margot tilted her head. "No. Sometimes they just spend an hour attacking people who try." The crowd exploded again. This time louder. Longer. Someone in the audience shouted, "Wow!" Joy's face tightened. For years, viewers had seen celebrities become uncomfortable at the View. They'd seen stars laugh nervously, change the subject, avoid conflict entirely. But Margot Robbie wasn't retreating, and that was making the room nervous. Joy gave a thin smile. "You came ready today." Margot answered instantly. "I came ready for a conversation." The audience oohed at the response. Even Whoopi looked impressed. Sunny Hostin tried steering things toward safer territory. "Margot, your new movie deals with power and identity, which is part of why people connect with your performances." But Joy interrupted again. "Does Hollywood ever admit it's disconnected from regular people?" Margot looked directly at her this time, and the warmth in her expression disappeared completely. What counts as regular people? She asked. Joy blinked. Margot continued before anyone else could speak. A nurse is regular people. A single mother is regular people. A construction worker is regular people. And guess what? Actors are people too. Applause burst across the studio. Joy shook her head slightly. That's not what I meant. But it's what you implied. Dead silence. For the first time in the interview, Joy seemed caught off guard. The cameras zoomed in tighter. The producers backstage were suddenly signaling frantically to each other. Because they could feel it too. This was becoming one of those moments. The kind that clips channels upload within minutes. The kind social media turns into a war zone before the episode even finishes airing. Joy gave a short laugh, but there was tension underneath it now. You're very defensive. Margot's response came calm and immediate. No, I just think people deserve respect, even when you disagree with them. The audience applauded again. Longer this time. And now the crowd seemed divided, not confused anymore, but choosing sides in real time. Some cheered Joy. Others loudly supported Margot. The atmosphere inside the studio became electric. Every sentence felt dangerous. Whoopi tried laughing to lighten the mood. Okay, nobody's throwing chairs today. But even she couldn't stop smiling nervously. Because everybody at the table knew something unusual was happening. Margot Robbie had stopped playing the polished Hollywood guest. And Joy Behar had no intention of backing down. Joy leaned closer again, voice lower now. Do you honestly believe celebrities understand what average Americans are going through right now? Margot stared at her for a moment before answering. No, she admitted. That shocked the audience. Even Joy looked surprised. Margot continued softly. But I also don't think television personalities fully understand either. Another wave of reactions crashed through the studio. You can sit behind a desk every day talking about people's struggles, Margot said. But eventually you risk turning pain into entertainment. That line hit like thunder. The audience gasped loudly. One host covered her mouth. Joy's smile vanished completely. And somewhere backstage, a producer whispered the sentence everyone watching was already thinking. This is getting out of control. The applause became deafening. Not because people agreed completely, but because nobody expected Margot Robbie to say any of this out loud. And the most shocking part? She wasn't finished. The applause refused to die down. It rolled through the studio in uneven waves, mixed with nervous laughter and stunned whispers as producers motioned desperately from behind the cameras for the show to regain control. But the atmosphere had already changed too much. The interview no longer belonged to the hosts. It belonged to the tension. Joy Behar sat rigidly in her chair, fingers tapping against the table while the audience slowly settled. Her smile had returned, but it looked thinner now, less natural. Across from her, Margot Robbie remained calm, though the intensity in her eyes hadn't faded. Whoopi tried again to steer things back toward safer territory. Well, she said with an uneasy chuckle, this is definitely more exciting than the interviews we usually get. The audience laughed gratefully, eager for relief. But Joy wasn't letting go. You know what bothers people? She asked suddenly, looking directly at Margot. It's when celebrities pretend they're victims while living these incredibly privileged lives. The room instantly tightened again. Margot didn't answer immediately. She looked down for a brief second, almost as if debating how honest she wanted to be. Then she looked back up. I don't think being successful removes your humanity. Joy shrugged. No, but it changes your reality. It changes parts of it, Margot replied. Not all of it. Joy tilted her head. You really believe Hollywood stars understand struggle the same way ordinary families do? Margot's voice stayed even. I think pain isn't a competition. The audience reacted with soft applause. Joy gave a skeptical laugh. Easy thing to say from a mansion in Los Angeles. A sharp murmur swept across the crowd. Even the other hosts looked uncomfortable now, because the comment felt less like debate and more like a direct shot. Margot's expression changed instantly. Not anger, disappointment, and somehow that felt heavier. You know, she said quietly, this is part of the problem. Joy crossed her arms. What problem? The assumption that once someone becomes successful, they stop being a real person. The room went silent again. Margot leaned forward slightly now, no longer hiding the emotion in her voice. You don't know what someone's carried through their life. You don't know their family struggles, their losses, their fears. But the second they become visible, people decide empathy no longer applies to them. The audience applauded loudly. Joy shook her head. Nobody's saying celebrities don't have feelings. But people love reducing them to stereotypes, Margot shot back. Especially women. That line hit hard. Sunny Hostin nodded subtly beside her. Joy noticed immediately. Oh, please, Joy replied. Now we're turning this into sexism? Margot didn't blink. No, she answered. I'm turning it into accountability. The audience exploded again. A man near the front row actually stood up clapping before quickly sitting back down. Whoopi rubbed her forehead, half amused and half horrified at how quickly the conversation was spiraling. You know what I think? Joy said, leaning closer again. I think celebrities want admiration without criticism. Margot answered instantly. No, I think some interviewers want confrontation more than conversation. The audience lost it. Gasps. Applause. A few shock laughs. Even one of the camera operators visibly reacted behind the lens. Joy's jaw tightened. For a split second, it looked like she might actually snap back emotionally instead of verbally. You think I'm attacking you? She asked coldly. Margot paused. Then came the sentence that changed the entire tone of the room. I think you decided who I was before I sat down. Complete silence. The crowd froze. Joy stared at her without speaking. And suddenly, for the first time since the interview began, the tension stopped feeling entertaining. It felt real. Margot's voice softened. That's the disappointing part. The audience quieted completely now, hanging on to every word. I came here excited, she continued. I knew we might disagree on things. That's normal. But disagreement and disrespect aren't the same thing. Joy opened her mouth to interrupt, but Margot continued before she could. And honestly, women deal with this constantly. Sunny shifted forward immediately, interested. Margot looked around the table. If a man pushes back strongly, he's confident. If a woman does it, suddenly she's defensive, emotional, difficult. Several audience members clapped immediately. Joy exhaled sharply through her nose. Nobody called you difficult. You implied it. No, I challenged you. Margot nodded slowly. Exactly. That confused the audience for a moment. Joy frowned. What's that supposed to mean? It means powerful women are constantly expected to absorb criticism gracefully while never making anyone uncomfortable in return. The crowd erupted again. Longer this time. Louder. Whoopi leaned back in her chair muttering, Lord have mercy. Because even she could tell the audience was beginning to rally behind Margot. Not entirely because of politics. Not even because they agreed with everything she said. But because she sounded authentic. And authenticity on live television is dangerous. Joy tried regaining control. So now I'm anti-woman because I asked hard questions? Margot shook her head calmly. No, but I think sometimes harshness gets mistaken for honesty. That line visibly irritated Joy. You know what? Joy replied. People are tired of celebrities acting morally superior. Margot's expression hardened slightly for the first time. And people are tired of outrage being treated like entertainment. A collective, oh, swept through the audience. The hosts exchanged glances. Even backstage, producers were panicking now. Because social media was already exploding. Clips were being uploaded in real time. Viewers online were picking sides by the second. Some were praising Joy for saying what normal people think. Others were calling Margot, the first celebrity in years to push back intelligently. And inside the studio, the emotional pressure kept building. Joy gave a short, sarcastic laugh. So now I'm the villain? Margot looked genuinely surprised. I didn't say that. You're implying it. Margot paused carefully. Then she said something that completely changed the emotional direction of the interview. No, she said softly. I think you're frustrated. The room went dead quiet again. Joy blinked. Margot continued gently. And honestly, I think a lot of people are. The hostility in her tone disappeared entirely. That's why conversations become so aggressive now. Everyone's angry. Everyone feels judged. Everyone feels unheard. Even Joy seemed caught off guard by the sudden shift. Margot leaned back slightly. But attacking each other doesn't fix that. For the first time in nearly 20 minutes, nobody interrupted. Nobody joked. Nobody clapped immediately. Because the room was processing something deeper now. And Joy's expression slowly changed. Not softer exactly, but less combative. Still, the tension remained hanging in the air like static electricity. Because everyone could feel the interview balancing on a knife's edge. One wrong sentence could either completely destroy the conversation, or turn it into television history. For a brief moment, it looked like the storm might finally calm down. The audience sat quieter now, almost emotionally exhausted from the constant tension. Even the studio lights seemed warmer somehow, softer against the table where the hosts and Margot Robbie sat facing one another like two people trapped in a conversation neither expected to become this personal. But underneath the silence, the pressure was still there, waiting, and everyone in the studio could feel it. Joy Behar adjusted the papers in front of her slowly, her expression unreadable. For the first time since the interview started, she looked less amused and more reflective. Whoopi cleared her throat carefully. I think what Margot's trying to say is people are just tired of being talked at all the time. Margot nodded slightly. Exactly. Joy looked over. But doesn't Hollywood do the same thing? Margot gave a small smile. Sometimes, yes. That answer surprised the room again. And it changed the energy immediately. Because suddenly Margot didn't sound defensive anymore. She sounded honest. I'm not pretending the entertainment industry is perfect, she continued. It absolutely isn't. There are people in Hollywood completely disconnected from reality. Joy raised her eyebrows as if she finally heard something she agreed with. But Margot kept going. The problem is when people stop seeing each other as individuals. The audience listened quietly now. No one says every television host thinks the same, Margot said. No one assumes every audience member believes identical things. But celebrities get turned into one giant stereotype. Joy leaned back slowly. Because they often repeat the same messaging. Margot nodded once. And media repeats outrage because outrage keeps people watching. That line drew a louder reaction than expected. Even some audience members who had supported Joy earlier began clapping. Because suddenly the conversation wasn't just about Hollywood anymore. It was about television itself. And everyone at the table knew it. Joy gave a small laugh, but this time it sounded less sharp. So now you're blaming us for everything? Margot smiled faintly. No, I think the entire culture feeds it. Whoopi pointed toward the audience jokingly. And y'all keep tuning in. The crowd burst into laughter, finally releasing some tension. But the relief didn't last long. Because Joy looked back toward Margot with a seriousness that immediately shifted the mood again. Can I ask you something honestly? Margot nodded. Joy folded her hands together. Do celebrities secretly look down on ordinary Americans? The audience went completely still. You could practically hear people breathing. It was the kind of question that could end the interview peacefully, or ignite another explosion. Margot stared at Joy for several seconds before answering. And when she finally spoke, her voice was quieter than before. I think some people with power look down on others, she admitted. Joy waited. So yes, Margot continued. Some celebrities probably do. Some politicians do. Some wealthy people do. Some media figures do. The crowd reacted immediately, because everybody understood the implication. Joy noticed too. A small smile appeared on Margot's face. But arrogance isn't exclusive to Hollywood. Several audience members applauded loudly. Joy exhaled through her nose, shaking her head slightly as if fighting the urge to laugh. You really came prepared. Margot's expression softened. No, she said. I came tired. That sentence hit the room differently. Not dramatic. Not fiery. Just real. And somehow it landed harder than all the applause lines before it. Tired of what? Sunny asked gently. Margot looked down briefly before answering. Tired of every conversation becoming a war. The audience became silent again. People don't talk anymore, she continued. They perform. They wait for mistakes. They wait for outrage. They wait for clips they can post online with angry captions. The cameras slowly zoomed tighter on her face. And honestly, she said quietly, it scares me sometimes. That vulnerability changed everything. Because suddenly the audience wasn't watching a celebrity clash anymore. They were watching someone drop their guard on live television. Joy's posture shifted slightly. Less confrontational. More curious. Margot looked around the studio. You know what's sad? Most people probably watching this right now already picked sides before hearing the full conversation. Nobody interrupted her now. They'll clip 10 seconds. Post it online. Call one person a hero and the other evil. And then tomorrow everyone moves on to the next fight. Even the audience applause this time sounded emotional instead of excited. Whoopi nodded slowly. That's true. Joy looked down for a second before speaking again. But conflict also exposes truth. Margot agreed immediately. Sometimes. Joy looked back up. So what truth is this exposing? The room froze again. And Margot's expression changed. Not angry. Not defensive. Just deeply serious. That people are lonely, she answered softly. The audience didn't move. That's why everyone's yelling all the time, she continued. People want to matter. They want to feel heard. They want someone to admit they're struggling. Even Joy seemed caught off guard by how emotional the conversation had become. Margot leaned back in her chair slowly. And when someone feels invisible long enough, she said, anger becomes the only language they think anyone notices. A woman in the audience wiped tears from her eyes. Nobody laughed now. Nobody whispered. The entire studio had fallen into this strange emotional stillness, where every sentence felt heavier than the last. Then Joy asked the question nobody expected. Do you think I'm angry? Margot looked at her carefully. And for the first time all interview, her answer came without hesitation. Yes. A shocked reaction rippled across the room. But Margot didn't stop there. And I don't even think it's because of me. Joy stared at her silently. Margot's voice stayed calm. I think you're frustrated with what culture has become. I think you're frustrated people don't trust institutions anymore. I think your frustrated conversations feel fake. Joy looked away briefly. And that tiny moment told the audience more than words could. Whoopi glanced between them carefully, almost stunned by how personal the discussion had become. Joy finally looked back. You think you know me now? Margot smiled sadly. No, she said. I think I recognize the feeling. Dead silence. Then applause began slowly. One person. Then another. Then the entire studio erupted. Not cheering for one side anymore. Not celebrating a comeback line. But reacting to something raw and painfully human that neither side expected to reveal when the cameras first started rolling. And backstage, producers stared at the live ratings climbing higher by the minute. Because what started as a celebrity interview had transformed into something far more dangerous for live television. Two people dropping the performance long enough to accidentally tell the truth. By the time the final commercial break ended, the atmosphere inside the studio barely resembled the cheerful daytime talk show energy the audience had walked into an hour earlier. Nobody was relaxed anymore. Not the producers whispering nervously behind the cameras. Not the hosts sitting unusually still at the table. Not even the audience, who now watched in near silence like they were witnessing the final moments of something unpredictable and historic. And in the center of it all sat Margot Robbie and Joy Behar. Two women who had started the interview talking about celebrity culture and somehow ended up exposing the emotional fractures underneath modern media itself. The cameras rolled again. The familiar red recording light blinked on. And suddenly millions of viewers at home leaned closer to their televisions. Whoopi smiled carefully, though exhaustion showed in her face now. Well, she joked softly, this has definitely been one of the more peaceful conversations we've had here. The audience laughed nervously. Even Joy cracked a reluctant smile. But the tension still lingered under everything. Whoopi turned toward Margot. Before we wrap up, is there anything you want people watching to take away from this conversation? The studio became completely silent. Margot paused longer this time. Long enough that even the audience stopped shifting in their seats. Then she finally spoke. I think people are forgetting how to give each other grace. The room stayed still. We've become addicted to tearing people apart, she continued softly. Not understanding them. Not challenging them respectfully. Destroying them. Several audience members nodded quietly. Margot glanced toward Joy. And honestly, I don't think anyone escapes it anymore. Joy looked down briefly. Margot continued. Celebrities get attacked. Journalists get attacked. Ordinary people get attacked online every day. Everybody's afraid of saying the wrong thing because outrage has become entertainment. That sentence hung heavily over the studio. Because everyone knew she was right. The audience erupted into applause again, but it sounded different now. Less excited, more emotional. Joy leaned back slowly, folding her arms. You know, she admitted, I still disagree with some of what you said. Margot smiled faintly. I know, but... Joy paused, choosing her words carefully. I'll give you credit. You didn't run from the conversation. The audience reacted immediately. Because after nearly an hour of escalating tension, it felt like the closest thing to peace they were going to get. Margot nodded respectfully. Neither did you. For the first time all interview, the tension between them eased slightly. Not erased, but understood. Whoopi exhaled dramatically. Thank God. I thought I was going to need security out here. The audience burst into laughter, finally releasing some of the pressure that had built inside the room all morning. Even Joy laughed genuinely this time. But backstage, producers were already staring at their phones in disbelief. Because social media had exploded beyond anything they expected. Clips from the interview were everywhere. Some users called Margot the first celebrity to completely dismantle daytime TV hypocrisy. Others praised Joy for asking questions most hosts are too afraid to ask. Hashtags flooded across platforms within minutes. Debate channels began uploading analysis videos before the episode had even finished airing. Comment sections became battlegrounds. People weren't just discussing the interview. They were discussing themselves. Their anger, their exhaustion, their distrust of media, their resentment towards celebrity culture, their fear that modern conversations had become impossible. And somehow, against all odds, one uncomfortable interview on The View had accidentally become the center of that emotional storm. Back inside the studio, the producers signaled there were only seconds left before the show ended. Whoopi turned toward the camera with the polished professionalism of someone who had survived decades of live television chaos. "Well," she said with a grin, "this was definitely a conversation people are going to be talking about." The audience applauded loudly. But then something unexpected happened. Joy looked back toward Margot one last time, and her expression softened. Not performative, not sarcastic. Real. Joy said quietly, "I think maybe people miss conversations like this because everything online is so fake now." Margot looked genuinely surprised by the honesty. Then she nodded. "Yeah," she answered softly. "I think people miss humanity." Dead silence filled the studio one final time. No applause yet. No jokes. Just that sentence lingering in the air. Because everybody felt it. The cameras slowly pulled wider as the final seconds ticked down. The audience finally erupted into applause, louder than at any other point during the interview. Not because somebody won. Not because someone got humiliated. But because for one rare moment on live television, two people stopped delivering rehearsed answers and actually confronted each other honestly. And viewers could feel the difference. By that evening, the internet was completely consumed by the fallout. Reaction videos spread everywhere. Body language experts analyzed every glance and facial expression. Media outlets called it the most emotionally charged View interview of the year. Fans defended Margot's calm intensity. Critics accused Joy of being too aggressive. Others argued the tension exposed deeper truths about celebrity culture, political exhaustion, and the emotional state of modern audiences. Meanwhile, millions of people kept replaying one particular moment over and over again. "I came tired." 3 simple words. But somehow they captured exactly how everyone seemed to feel lately. And that was why the interview refused to disappear. Because beneath the confrontation, beneath the applause, beneath the viral clips and online arguments, people recognized something painfully familiar in that studio. A world full of exhausted voices trying desperately to be heard. So now we want to hear from you. Whose side were you on during this explosive clash? Did Margot Robbie make powerful points? Or do you think Joy Behar was right to challenge Hollywood culture directly? Drop your opinion in the comments below and join the conversation. And don't forget to subscribe to the Echo View for more dramatic celebrity stories, emotional confrontations, and unforgettable moments from the world of entertainment.